This is Las Doctoras podcast with your favorite profas, Dr. Renee Limas
and Doctora Cristina Rose. Join us as we bring women and gender studies topics out of the university and onto the kitchen table.
Salud!
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome to Las Doctoras podcast, episode something or other, season 6.
Something like this. Yes, here we are again, still liking to talk to each other and here talk about things on our heart.
I feel like we should say the date. We are recording on November 27th, 2023, and we are so happy to have a wonderful guest that we've been excited to have on for a long time. So please introduce yourself. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. Oh, let me dial down the excitement. Just not out the gate like, hey, everybody. So I'm Sara Stanizai. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a feminist business coach for mostly other therapists. I use she, her pronouns. I live here on Tongva and Keach land in Long Beach, California. I'm born and raised in LA. My family is from Afghanistan. They came here 150 years ago. Actually, that's not true. They came here in the 70s. My sister and I were born here, so we're first-gen Americans. Yeah. That's great. The important part. I'll tell you my big three, and you can probably already tell just from how I have introduced. So it is my season. It is November 27th. It is officially Sag season. So Sagittarius sun.
I love me Sagittarius.
I mean, I don't blame you. My moon is in Scorpio. My rising is Leo.
I swear I was going to say you have to have Leo in there somewhere because you are bringing Leo energy. Oh, that is, I feel like that's, so Sag, that's a fire sign, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She's got like triple fire. I mean, Scorpio is not technically fire, but it's like fire water.
It's fire-y.
If you're going to have a water sign, it should be Scorpio. If the rest of your chart is
fire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's like a triple threat right there. I feel like that's like.
I feel like it gives me a good balance of like. My whole life motto is like we can be serious and also. Completely superficial. Like you are allowed to do both, and people think like, well, I have to only be one or the other, and what right do I have to do the other thing? And I'm like, no, you should do both.
Yeah.
I
That's
love it.
Beautiful. I can see it in all of the images I've seen of you. Yeah, in your practice. I love it. I love that you help other therapists mostly. That's
Yeah,
I know.
That means a lot to me, actually, because as anybody who has started a business knows, it can feel very competitive and very you like are worried about what everybody else is doing, and you want to like hoard your ideas, and you want to think that's what's going to save you. And I was also like that, and I think people feel a lot of shame about that, where they kind of play their cards really close to the chest. It was kind of the therapeutic process for me to get to a place where I, openly and generously like really help other therapists. And you know what helps? Not doing it for free. So.
Say that. I mean, so tell us then tell us your story. Where did it all begin? Why? What inspired you to become a therapist?
How did the Sagittarius become a therapist? I mean, they like to take care of other people, right? They're fun-loving.
I think I wouldn't say we're the most nurturing. I would say that if you fuck up, a Sagittarius is not going to make you feel bad about it.
Okay.
I mean, unless you're
unconditional like acceptance.
Yeah. I feel like if you're in my circle, like it's cool. If you know, I'm just gonna like pee my pants laughing at you, but like it's okay. It's because I love you.
And
I
your
love
moon,
it.
your Scorpio, like wants to know, like wants to really know.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's so many different starting points. We can start with, you know, when I got to grad school. We can go back and start to me being a middle child who always wanted to mediate and everybody was like heard and like everybody was taken care of and like super scared of conflict. I mean, we can go back to just me being born in LA and being, you know, at a time when people didn't even know what Afghanistan was. Like, if you can, I mean, people still don't really know what it is, but at a time when people had never heard of it, that most people, I remember in elementary school, people didn't know. I said something about being Muslim, and they were like, "What is that?" Like, they had never even, they didn't even know it was a religion. They probably thought I meant lesbian or something, which I don't know.
But maybe no.
Fun fact, everybody thought I was queer before I did, so whatever.
Same.
But I think all of those things contributed to my story. I think even my what was it? My adolescent awakening, the first time I watched The Crow, and I was like, oh, I'm goth. I know who I am now because like early like awakenings and like celebrity crushes, though that is like one of my favorite topics because I feel like it says so much about you.
Okay, who is your celebrity crush like then and now?
Well, then it was definitely oh my God. It was The Crow. It was Marilyn Manson. It was, oh, you know who it was? It was Dr. Frankenfurter. Till the day I die. I swear. And everybody thought I was they were like, what? And I was like, I'm not gonna say this again. Cool. I like JTT, just like everyone. But now, like now I'm having my like comeuppance or whatever it's called. Now I'm being vindicated because people are like, wow, remember all those people we had crushes on when we were little? And I'm like, you know what I didn't get? There's people out here on the internet talking about how the Robin Hood, the Fox cartoon was like their sexual awakening because he's like so dashing. And I was like, okay.
He's a cartoon. I mean, look.
Please don't make fun of me for like Marilyn Manson as like this little goth teenager. Like,
we're in love with a fox. I mean, I will say Jessica Rabbit. Okay. I was like, you know, I mean.
And we all just thought we really liked her eyeshadow, but
oh, seriously.
I mean, I know what I liked about her, but you know.
You see, a true Sagittarius would be like, you know what, you should like whoever you like. It's not for me, but whatever.
I'm liking this. We can add it to our intro, make it longer. So tell us
who is your childhood celebrity crush?
Yes. Well, my current adult celebrity crush is oh my God. You know, I don't care. It's Sacha Baron Cohen.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that man will take his shit to like extreme.
Oh yeah.
That commitment and like you can have me introduce this too, but my Venus is in Aquarius and it does not get more Aquarius. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's very
like super weird. A humanitarian.
I mean, I was gonna say like when I've heard him like be out of character, like be himself, he's I get it. Like he's pretty sexy. He's like you know, he has this very like intellectual, you know, kind of swag about him. Yeah, totally.
You have to be really smart to act that stupid.
What?
You have to be really smart to act that stupid.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember watching him like in the 2000s, early 1990.
He was doing like Ali G or some weird.
And he was Ali G, and he was like all of these And he was
Is that what did it for you?
To be clear, it is not any of the characters.
I
It's
mean,
him,
now these days, all I
him
see
as a
him
person.
is that Madagascar movie with my kid.
Oh, right, of course. I love it.
I miss that one, but I'm not into cartoons. I guess that's my problem.
Oh, no. I think I should confess. I think Mario Lopez was mine, and I can't. I guess he's still. He's not anymore, of course, but he does look pretty good for how old he is and stuff like that.
Oh, I'm like, okay, I'm super basic. Like, I was definitely a JTT, Jonathan Taylor Thomas, a Devon Sawa, and a oh God, I always want to say Jordan Catalano, but it's Jared Leto.
Well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me because they're basically, they were queer women.
I was like, so I totally saw this meme where it was something about how did you know you were queer? And it's like their childhood crushes are all these boys with the long hair. And I was like, oh,
yes, feminine features. Hello.
Very, yeah. Totally. It all makes sense.
Lance Bass, totally.
Yeah. You know what I just realized? I think all of mine had in common is dressing up.
Oh, yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
You heard it here
I feel
first.
there's some psychoanalysis we can do, right? On
I mean, Leo rising, total performative, would love that about them. Yeah.
I would say my adult crush though is definitely Pedro Pascal. All day long.
Yes. I still don't understand it, but I think I didn't watch The Last of Us, so I feel like that has a big to do with it.
But what Sacha Baron Cohen persona do you like? Do you like what is it the one that he dresses up? Bruno? Is it not at all? No.
None of those are sexy to me. Although I did love oh my gosh, maybe it was Bruno. I don't even remember the names. I just love when he just pushes people.
Yeah. Oh no, what was when he played the dictator or something?
Yeah. I just appreciate.
I saw all those movies in the theater. I just want you to put that into perspective because my husband loves those kind of movies. I saw the last
one in a drive-in theater because it was during the pandemic. So that is dedication.
What does Sacha Baron Cohen have to say about the world right now? Does he do stuff like that? Is he posting those things?
He is. That actually took him down a notch in my celebrity crush book. But not too bad. A little bad, but he's just very he's taking, ironically, I think he's actually taking a very safe route and just saying oh, I wish.
Wow.
I know. Oh my God.
Terrible.
What's here right now?
I love how we're just gossiping about our crushes right now. Pedro Pascal hasn't said anything either. Nothing. Radio silence. So I'm a little
I mean, I think
disappointing.
Yeah, he's just said things like, "Oh, bring the Israeli hostages home," and he hasn't really taken a stance. He did sign the stupid letter about whatever.
There's been 50 letters. I'm like, what are these letters doing?
I know. He hasn't taken the strong stance that I wish that he would.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, honestly, it's been so nice these last 20 minutes talking about these things because I mean, life is just I need some good laughing.
We need some a little bit.
And I think so. Actually, I think that's a good segue into something we kind of talked about right before we hit record was the idea of how do we? I always say how do we find joy in the middle of chaos? And I think Sarah, you were speaking to of how do you were saying about people who seek therapy and oh, I'm gonna wait until life is settled, and then that never actually happens. And so I know that for me, I tend to be somebody who does that where I'm oh, I don't deserve to feel happier. I don't deserve to just live my life because the world is on fire. And it's having to realize yeah, we can still have these moments of silliness, knowing that like there's always going to be a fire somewhere. And but maybe we can kind of speak to that, like as a therapist.
Well,
Yeah.
I think like people can hear that and hear it as a cop out. Like, well, what am I supposed to do? There's always something. There's so many people that
Mm,
need help.
mm,
I'm just going to ignore it and like enjoy my life. And that's a
mhm,
very different sentiment than
Mhm.
I know fully that I'm doing what I can in these areas so
Mhm.
that I don't have to do it 24/7 and be racked with
Mhm.
guilt and total like have so much survivor's guilt that I'm not even going to use hot water in my house.
Mhm.
You know,
mhm,
that impulse is very real for a lot of us who can either
mm,
identify or have directly seen our own people suffer from stuff like this that,
mhm.
I feel guilty when I use electricity and,
Wow.
so we want to be able to pull back. And it doesn't mean, oh, just stay willfully ignorant and, oh, I don't get
Mhm,
into all that stuff. It's more so let me make sure I'm doing what works for me, what like my values are. Some people
mhm,
are very much like, oh, I'm not going to just throw money at the problem and I'm going to like get in there and roll up my sleeves and do things. And other people are like, I have like a family and like a bunch of stuff that I have to do. I don't have time to do that stuff, but I will actually donate some money or
mm,
talk to somebody or raise awareness or something that I can do. And
mhm,
I just remind people that I have been reminding people for like basically the whole time I've been in business, for one mental health crisis after another, of pick something and stick to that. And when people say, "Hey, can you do this? Can you do that?" and you're like, "No, this is what I'm doing."
mm,
Mhm.
And you can be flexible. You can add to it, you can whatever, but it helps you not feel like pulled in so many directions and so be so overwhelmed that you can say, well, no, my thing is, for me, my thing is I'm actually helping people one-on-one and in groups and I'm doing as much as I can.
Yeah.
mhm,
So no, I'm not gonna be able to do all these other things. And I show up to, events and marches when I can, but everybody has the right to choose what that is for themselves. Um,
mm.
and then the rest of the time you do get to enjoy your life and it's okay to giggle about whatever and
Yeah.
to live your life. So
I appreciate that and love that so much, because I think that um I mean it's
Mhm.
all the rhetoric going around social media, and there's, as much as we like to think or believe that we can be nuanced on social media,
mhm,
like I don't think we actually can. And
Mhm.
I think that that's a big part of it right there. It's still binary. Christine and I always talk about, like, how do we break away from all these binaries, right? So this binary notion of like you're either doing everything or you're doing nothing.
mhm,
And so I love that you say, it's not about being ignorant and being like, oh, I don't, but it's about like knowing what we do. And I always say, I know that where my values lie, and I know that I'm always going to be true to who I am no matter what. And so I I don't want to feel guilty, for not going above and beyond, because that's
Mhm.
capitalist bullshit, right?
mhm,
Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that, yeah, like, yeah, I mean, come on, we're in classrooms, with
mhm,
students, and that's our
Mhm.
work, right? Or literally our life's work committed to that. So, um,
And
and
with our
yeah,
children, and just
yeah.
another full-time job, trying
Bless
to
you for doing
and all of those, like we were saying before, being real, but being
mm,
hopeful, like regulating so that I can help when there is dysregulation with my students or my kid, and I think that what you just said, Sarah, was so beautiful. Yes, like approaching it with, this is what I do, and being confident in that, in the sacred gifts that we bring, our activism, um, for our inner judges and for the outer judges too, but
that. Yeah.
to me these days it's like get up and I say, I am deserving on my affirmations, and then like I am doing, this is my calling. This is where I give my energy this week, and it's for the greater good of everyone, and yeah, it's my activism.
Yeah.
Reminder, artist date. That's what I said. I'm happy about that. I didn't say like, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I have so many things.
I know.
But I think people are just, you know, it's falling out of my head. I'm sorry. Things as I was listening to you, and I was like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. But anyway.
I mean, tell us maybe to like, I feel like, especially the content that you put out, like, you're a different kind of therapist.
I'm sure I am, because I'm just as much myself as I can be.
That's the thing I think that is because I think that's something that we try to do too. I know something I try to do as a professor, right, is break these notions that I somehow know everything because I'm a professor. I'm like, I don't know shit, right? I mean, I know what I know, but I also don't know everything. And I always tell my students, you all know stuff that I don't. And, how can we create, a much more like, I always say like a mutual learning dynamic, right? Where we're learning from each other. And that's what education should be about. But I think your content in terms of therapy is so not just relatable, but like approachable. It's so real and you're so transparent. Maybe you can speak to your intentions with that.
Yeah, I think, my online social media presence has kind of gone through a bunch of iterations, and I just realized, like, you don't need to do all that. And I think people get really precious about everything, as they should. Like, you should be able to stand by what you're saying. I very rarely do I do like off the cuff stuff. I don't have a huge audience or anything, but like, you don't want that stuff out there if you're like, oh, actually I changed my mind. But I just remember that I can change my mind, and it's okay to say, oh, that's what I thought then, this is what I think now, and to demonstrate that process for people so that they too know that you're allowed to learn new things. And oh my gosh, go back on your word or what you said and say, actually, I didn't know everything at that time. Like, how sad if you're the same person you were 5 years ago. So, it helps you see what sticks. It helps you figure out, everybody talks about their values and I know who I am, but how do you figure that out? You got to go through puberty type stuff. And sometimes like you need your community to reflect that back to you and be like, what the hell? So when my crush calls me and is like, Sara, I'm so obsessed with you. I've noticed that you're in love with me. I'll be like, what the hell? Why are you like talking about this and not that, bro? We can have that discussion. I'm sorry.
I think the humanness that you're, what you're saying, I think that's what you were saying, Renee, too, to a certain degree, too. Like, we're human. We're also trying to show that we're not just professors. Like, we're not like always on the clock, with that work. You're not always a therapist, wearing that hat. And at the same time, we could, right? We could wear it all the time. That's the thing, But we also need to wear these other spaces. And we also need to dismantle perfectionism, within us. I love that we recognize that in younger people, I think. I hope there's grace, especially for students, right? We're thinking, oh, you're learning. That's it. That's your job. But I think everyone is a perpetual student. We're always learning. And it doesn't just happen in our teens or tweens, it happens in our 30s and 40s.
Yeah, I think that we are all leaders in our own way, either in our communities, even in our, in your classroom, or me in my session. I can't pretend that there's not a power differential, and that I can't stop at saying, well, I'm just like you, or like we're co-learning together. Like, that would make somebody probably feel a little bit unsafe sometimes, be like, oh, well, like, well, like, oh my God, I was relying on you to like take the lead on this stuff. And so it is a balance. Yes, we are all human and we're all learning. And to acknowledge we have the added responsibility and added
Yeah.
power or like
Mhm.
authority or whatever people are putting on us that we are
Mhm.
volunteering for, so that we can't, again, I feel like I keep talking about it has to be both. Like, yes, I could say, well, whatever, I can just change my mind and I'm still learning and don't look at me. But I also have to say, like, oh, I recognize that like people are relying on me for something, or
Mm.
like when I say something, it does influence people, or people
Mm.
are looking, you know, and I can't just say,
Yeah.
I'm not your mom, like you're an adult, don't look at me. It's like, well, okay, but you are asking for people to listen to what you're saying, so you should have some responsibility for it. And that
Mhm.
applies whether I'm, you know,
Mm.
giving a talk or a training to a group of people, or if I'm online just like randomly making posts, or even when I'm one-on-one in a session with someone, I have to be very intentional about everything I'm saying and doing and what I'm picking up from the other person. That's something I remind people a lot in my sessions. Like, I've said this before, but like sometimes people think like, is my therapist just like therapy is just somebody like listening and nodding along and just saying good
Mm.
for you, right? And
Mm.
you know, people who are new to it or who have never done it think that, and even people who have been to therapy and may not have gotten as much as they wanted out of it are like,
Or had a not so
yeah,
good therapist. I mean,
Yeah.
not all therapists are created equal.
yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like I've had many different therapists, and yeah, I remember there was one who literally was just like nod, and I was like, are you gonna say anything? Like, are you gonna respond?
And then they're like, well, I can't tell you what to do, or I don't give advice. And you're like, okay, but like something,
Something, right? Some
what do
kind
you
of like
think of this? And they're like,
mirror what I'm saying.
why is it important to you to know what I think about your situation? It's like, please stop. Like, okay,
I wonder if it's very telling that now in therapy, I'll actually wait.
good,
What are you going to say now? Like, I'm kind of,
good.
Yeah.
but I don't know. I think it could be good. But there's like not a willing suspension of like, I'm critically thinking, which is okay, but I'm there to actually like cry or like feel my feelings. Right. And so those, I don't know if they work together in the same way, but I appreciate you saying the responsibility factor. I think that that's something that we talk a lot about, the two of us, on this platform, on the podcast, and with
Mhm.
our students, and um,
What
having
I
the education that we have, offering it back, to the community, being responsible.
what I tell people is, it may look like they're, or I am like just sitting there and like entertained and just like, oh, and then what happened? But you know, we are constantly, we're picking out which things we're going to listen for, and we're picking out which things like, oh, you've said that a few times. And so we're not just listening like a friend or like a nosy neighbor, we're listening as someone who knows your inner workings, and you know, other times that this might have happened that you might not recognize, and it's like, oh, you always get mad when people do that to you, and you're like, oh my God, do I? What is that about? I thought, like, just go back to just listening. Like, never mind. I don't want to talk about this. But we're holding all of these different like parts of the spider web together and like bringing them together. And yeah, sometimes if you're really good at it, it might look like, oh, tell me more about that specific thing you said. And you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Why is she going there? I want to talk about my mom. But,
Uh-huh.
I tell my therapist, like, why you gotta read me like that? Like,
yeah.
why did you have to call me out?
We need that though. I've never had a therapist be like, okay, so then what happened? Like,
Oh
so,
no, it's okay. I mean, we all have our own different styles. You know, I will say one more thing is like the same goes for self-disclosure or like, oh, I'm human too. And I think sometimes people have this experience as clients in therapy, which I've had and people have told me they've had with me, where they're like, oh my God, how did you know that?
Mm.
And the way I know it is because I've listened to you and I know you pretty well. And that's right. And also I've probably heard this is a very common universal experience. I've actually heard this story a lot of times. No, not exactly the same.
Yeah.
And sometimes the reason I know it is because I personally also have gone through it.
Mm.
And as soon as, like, all of those things count, all of those make me the therapist that I am. But sometimes, as soon as somebody learns that, oh, I've been through it,
Mm.
they forget all the other stuff. And they're like, you're just saying that because that's what happened to you. And you're going to try to make me do what you did. And like, maybe it's not going to turn out for me the way you did. And like, maybe you need to, people will make up all these reasons of like,
Huh.
oh, she's not me, or maybe this isn't right. And we'll avoid, we'll kind of panic and be like, well, this can't be right. Maybe she's just saying that because that's what she went through. And so it's really important. Again, when I disclose things, I'm very mindful of it, and whether people know things about me in general versus if I'm like hijacking somebody's therapy session and I'm like, okay, well, let me tell you about my, and it's like, okay, relax. But my own personal experience is truly only one thing that I'm pulling from when I'm working with a client. I'm also pulling from just all my other experience too, and my training and knowledge and all the other clients I've seen and things that you personally have told me. So
Yeah.
if you're the type of client who's looking for a reason why stuff's not going to work out or something, it can be easy to kind of blame that. But anyway, that's just something I've been thinking about. So
I mean, I like, tell us more about your practice. Like, it just, I don't know, it just has me like, God, you must be, like, can we do a therapy session? No.
I mean, I think that's what we're trying not to do. Right?
We're like, let's not. But I mean, I think it's important for us to say too how we met, right? Like, we know each other through June, right? June McKay, and we had the pleasure of being on retreat together, which, God, that was like a year and a half ago now. Like, was that 20?
I think it was 21.
Was it 21?
It might have been 22. I actually don't know. It's all a blur.
I don't think so.
I feel like the last couple of years was definitely a blur, but that was such a fun experience. And I think, that to me, it tells, like, in terms of business wise, like, we're coming from this very like decolonial, right? Like, we're trying to do business a little differently. And so I know that, like, we know what we know about your practice, but maybe you can share a little bit about like what, who your clientele is. I mean, like, where you specialize and like what's the word?
My like
what your values in your practice are.
Yeah. I mean, it's a running joke, especially among therapists. Like, your ideal client is often yourself or something that you've been through. I make the point, especially when I'm hiring other therapists, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know who I would just want to work with anyone who wants to improve their life." And I'm like, okay, but I think it's important that it's helpful to have our own personal lived experience. It's kind of as mandatory as it can be that it is something that you have worked through. It can't be, it's a lot harder to do therapy with someone who is going through something that you are currently also going through. It can absolutely be done. Hello, like pandemic stress, like we're not exempt. And I'm not going to say like it's unethical or you shouldn't or whatever, but I do think it's much more beneficial to your work and to your client if it's something that you have more or less resolved. It's, we're kind of never done resolving everything, but if I have something that's very painful for me, it's going to be really hard for me. So I'll just kind of say that, but the shorter answer is, the more I've gotten in touch and explored my own experience as a first gen and somebody whose, parents were immigrants and my sister and I were the first gen born here, how much that impacts our mental health. And I'm sure a lot of people say this, but when I first started my business in 2018, there was not a lot of people doing this work or even talking about it. people actively told me, they were like, "That doesn't count. You have to have it has to be trauma. It has to be something else." And I was like, "No, I'm marketing to these people." And it was really hard in the beginning, but
Mm.
really happy that more and more people are getting into this and like getting in touch with that. I think it's probably because it's more common socially, but also I think it has to do with like our life stages. And when we get to the age, I'm almost 40, and people start back at like, where did I come from? And like, why am I the way I am? You're not doing that when you're 22, really. You're just right about like, how did I become this person? Anyways, so I would say first gen, I actually really, really love couples therapy.
Mm.
All relationships, I think you learn so much more about people when their intimate partners are like right there with them. You see their
Wow.
dynamic changes. Like I am a different person when I'm alone versus when I'm with my partner, just socially. Um, and I think people get more honest because they're like, oh, this person's gonna call me out on this. Oh, okay. But on the other hand, you know, people also become a little bit different versions of themselves. And so their partner might say, like, wow, I didn't even know that about you. And it
Mm.
really highlights for people like, oh my gosh, especially if there's distress, like if they're in therapy, it's usually because
Mm.
they have lost touch with certain parts of each other or themselves or something, and they feel like their partner doesn't recognize them or they don't recognize their partner, something like that. That is very, um, to me, that's kind of like the easiest therapy there is, which people laugh at me when I say
Wow.
because it's all just like right out there. I mean, it's so obvious to me. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's really who I work with, but I've been really happy that I've built this team of other therapists who all have their own specializations, and they love really
Mm.
working with neurodivergent folks or with teens
Mm.
or with people coming out of like high control, like religious trauma, people who are kind of
Wow.
questioning
Yeah.
their relationship to faith or organized religion. So I think in general, what we say is um, at Prospect Therapy, the outsiders are the insiders. So cute.
Love it.
The more you know. Felt like I can't tell anybody this, and I need to figure it out somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, I just feel like we're going so like deep and metaphysical. It just feels real.
I mean, I think, yeah, I think it's so important. Like you said, I love the outsiders are the inside.
You can't say it without that voice.
I know. It took me years to realize that that was the missing factor in therapy for me. So most recently, I have a Latina therapy, and it has made a world of difference because there's just a shared language, and I don't mean like a literal shared, language, but like just the understanding of the world in a different way. And it's just, yeah, it's like you can let your guard down a little bit more. You don't have to like do that cultural translation, or you know what I mean? And so I think that that's such an important part. It's interesting because I've had students who have inquired about, because I'll talk about the importance of, of any kind of therapy. And they'll be like, well, how do I find a therapist? And so, like, at the colleges and universities, they offer like counseling sessions. And I'm like, I think you should take advantage because they're free, right? And not all therapists, right? Like, I say finding a therapist is like finding a good pair of jeans. You might have to try a few on, you know. Um, and especially when I have students who are like POC or queer, I'm like, and I think at one point I had some like resource list, and I was like, you might want to find somebody that's gonna understand your particular experience, and that can really be the difference,
Yeah, I
Uh,
think what's even more useful is sometimes people get really hung up on like I have to find somebody who checks all of these boxes,
mm,
and sometimes somebody within your own community can actually
mhm,
be not the therapist.
mhm, mhm.
They might have stuff they haven't worked through, or it might just feel like you're seeing your mom for therapy. Like I don't want.
Yeah.
I think again, we care a lot about identity and experience, but I also know that's not the whole story.
Mm.
I could talk a lot about this, but one advice I have for people is don't get fixated on what do they have in common with you, but ask them or have them demonstrate what happens when they don't have something in common, or they don't understand, or you feel like they don't understand, or what are you going to do when we disagree? And it's really, sometimes it's the case that I am trying to squirrel away from something and I'm like, therapist, do not ask me that. Yes, I am resisting therapy right now. I do not like that. Like, please don't call me out on my shit right now. It is not all the time though. And a lot of therapists I'll be like, I'm not happy about the way you handled that. And they'll be like, well, is it because you're not ready for therapy? It's like, no, I didn't like the way you handled that. Sometimes it's not just like, oh, I'm avoidant or I'm triggered or I'm not doing the work or whatever. Sometimes it's like, you screwed up. So,
This is good. I think people need to hear. I think I need to hear that.
That you're allowed to call out your therapist.
Yeah, I think I can. I'm sure I didn't feel that way in the past and just kind of ended sessions and went to someone different, and instead being able to say, hey, yeah, I didn't, some nonviolent communication, right? When you said that, I felt this way, because I need to feel, that seems really important. And for everyone to know. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, you can say
I tell people in the beginning, I'm like, I'm going to be really happy when you come to me and say like, Sarah, I didn't like how you handled that last week.
Wow.
And they're like, oh my God, I will never say that to you. And I was like, I mean, I hope you don't, but if you do, I hope you do come and say it to me. Yeah. I'm guessing that you're coming to therapy because you don't speak up for yourself and you're like overextend and you're like the best friend to everybody else and you never like get what you need. And they're like,
I'm like, okay, what is your human design?
Okay, it's the first session, girl. Damn. But I think
a manifester.
That's why I often start a lot of sessions, especially in the beginning. I'll be like, hey, is there anything left over from last week? And most of the time they're like, no, I don't remember, like whatever. I need to talk to you about this. I'm like, that's fine. But
that's such a good question.
So good.
Yeah, like what stayed with you and whether it's something good or something where you're like, I didn't resolve this. Like, I don't like this. Like that's a really good example of, yes, I'm learning with you, but also I'm going to take the responsibility for what we're doing in here.
Totally.
I'm like, that's such a good, I'm like, I try to do that sometimes in my class. I'm like, so how is it all sticking with you since last time? And they'll be like, whatever. But that's, I never even imagined that in therapy and being able to, now I'm like, man, I've had some therapists say some weird stuff. And I never thought about just being like, hey.
Usually you're like, oh my gosh, I'm glad that's over. Can we talk about something else now?
Yeah, that's so, and that's empowering, I think.
Yeah. And side note, you like it's perfectly okay that you just were like, I'm just not going to go back and see them.
Yeah.
You don't pay somebody to like work through that with them. You can also just decide not to fight that battle today. It's totally fine.
But I am interested, it's so, for most of my therapy life, it's been through school and I've, been in different schools and transitioned to different places. So I can thank Ferdinand at Long Beach State, when I was there for my master's, I can thank these people, but then I left and then I couldn't see them anymore. And this is the first time I've been at a job or a place, a station in life for like 10 years, right? So I have this opportunity actually to develop bigger relationships with longer ones with therapy, and I want to. And so I think I'm at a place also personally where I could say something like that, and just so that I have the choice. And it's so nice, to know.
Yeah.
I think that's such Sagittarius energy to be like, just tell like
Yes.
I'm such a triple water sign. I'd be like, don't tell me if you don't like me. Or like today
With the
I had that.
coffee, the sweet coffee, right? The sugar,
I
the
need
milk.
so much
No
sugar. I
coffee
need
at all, just
so
the
much
milk
sugar in my
and the
coffee.
sugar.
Today I was doing that with students. I was like, so because it was going to be the last time that I'm meeting with them, and I was like, so tell me, what's what are you going to take away from this class? And I was like, and what maybe can I work? Like I was so like hesitant to ask like what can I work on? Because it's I mean, again, it's hard. And it's not that I don't want that constructive criticism, is that it takes me a really long time to like process and not take it personally. But I love that you're able to just be like, yeah, just let me know. Like it's it's
I'm
okay.
actually gonna be really happy when you do it.
Yeah.
Really?
And for that question, something I ask in we do like little client satisfaction surveys, just we do them regularly, and I'll say like, if you could change one thing about prospect therapy, what would it be? And that way, I don't feel all like butthurt about it. Then it's just information, which is true. It's just data. So that's been really helpful for me. So do with that what you will.
I love that. I feel like Christine said, we've been going deep. I want to go back to the superficial.
It was like when I say we're going deep, it's like I'm not gonna
I'm like, I want to go back to like, I don't know. I just to like sandwich it, right? This combo with like,
Let's do it.
like, so where do we go? I don't know. Something fun. Here's a good question. And maybe this is in the realm too of like, what's your astrology? What's your childhood crush? What are you watching on TV these days? Or what movies are you?
Gosh, I'm actually rewatching one of my favorite shows, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
I haven't even watched that third season. Was it? I just
Okay, wait. So you saw the whole series?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that last season?
Oh my gosh.
You can give it away. Spoilers are fine. I don't know if I'm gonna get it.
I loved every season of that show.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Don't you think they jumped the shark? Anyways.
I thought they gave the people what they wanted. I thought that people like I really love like dark, tragic, heavy shows where it just ends and you're like, oh my God, I wish I never started watching that. Like Breaking Bad is my favorite
like
show.
Lost? Oh my God, did you ever see Lost?
I gave up on Lost.
I watched Lost to the very end.
So where you just end and you're like, oh my God, this was
what a waste of time.
I'm gonna watch it again right now. I liked how this show ended. It kind of gave us like it gave me a really nice feeling, and it was like, oh, I would have been sad if it ended without showing blah blah blah, or like having this. And I actually haven't rewatched the end yet, so I don't remember all the details, but I just remember being like, good for them, like they did it. They checked every box, and it wasn't cheesy. And I'm a very, very cheesy, like sentimental person. So if
I like cheese.
Yeah, if people were like, "Oh my God, so corny," I would be like, "Oh, I didn't notice because I just thought it was awesome."
I mean, I'm definitely, I love some cheese. I think I just got like in that last season, I was like, what is happening? Like I felt like there was a tone, that was kind of set in those first like couple seasons that I was like, I think the tone got a little lost, like the things that I really liked about it. But I always feel like this. I don't know if you've ever seen like Spanish language novelas, soap operas, because they're different than English language ones that go on for like 50 years, right? Like Days of Our Lives is still on, the still fucking same people. Like I'm like, do I really care about them anymore? But in Spanish language novelas, they end, right? They have like a, I don't know, 6-month maybe or 3-month, like, and then they come to an ending. And without a doubt, I always, when you watch a novela and then they come to like the last few episodes, it's like they ran out of money or something. They just try to like cram all of this like stuff like in the end just to like wrap it up really quickly. And so you're like, like what?
I will say, like they're trying to do too much.
Yeah, that's what I was like. Wait, what? Like they were trying to they knew where they wanted to end, but in the
Yes,
between, it
but
kinda got weird.
I would rather them do too much rather than them just being like,
Like, drag
"Well,
it on.
you put it together. We couldn't tell all of these stories at once.
Mm,
You know, the show's just over." So I would rather
Mm,
artistically, I really appreciate like an ambiguous fill in the blank kind of ending as an artist,
okay.
but as a like viewer and consumer of TV, I'm like, "No, just tell me." Like if I were to make art, which is like the hardest thing ever, I would probably do the very intellectual, like, what do you think happened? Like, you know,
Mm.
it kind of open-ended,
interesting.
but anyways, I love that show and I love all of it, and I can't choose a favorite character, and
Really?
it is so fast. Oh
It
my god.
is fast.
It's so like little things if you don't pay attention, and those little throwaway lines are so funny to
It's
me.
very, what is there was another show, it was called Newsroom, and it was I forget who the director was. He's known for having, like, super fast dialogue.
Mhm.
And it was I had to watch it a few times. I was like, "What is happening?" Or have you seen the show Morning Show? It's on Apple TV, so maybe not, but, like, yeah, it's a really interesting, but that,
Mhm.
like, fast pace, like, the
Mhm.
jokes are, like you're, like, 5 lines in, you're, like, barely getting it.
Yeah.
Um,
I kind
yeah.
of if people are fans of, like, Coen Brothers movies, it kind of
Yeah,
reminds me of
yeah,
that,
definitely.
where it's like you think it's just ordinary lines, but when you're like, "Oh my god, that's really funny."
I want to confess that I was just watching a movie that was from books. It was called Shadow and Bone. I think that was the first one it was called. And I just watched the series on Netflix. And it was pretty good. It was good. But it wasn't fast. It was really like, philosophical and everything like that.
I know, I'm like, what did we maybe we can all say, because I know that we all saw Marvelous and Mrs. Maisel, like, what drew us to it? What was it about it that, like, we
I mean, the
really liked?
beginning was pretty good, where she just like, I don't know, she
Oh.
finds out, she goes somewhere, she just
I
takes off
think
her coat and says it all and then gets arrested, right? Like,
a lot of people recommended it to me, and from what it looked like, and honestly from the name, I was like, "I'm not watching this Downton Abbey shit." Like, I don't know what I didn't know what it was. I was like, "I'm not watching this." Um, but the pilot, I was like, "Oh, I didn't realize what this was," and it was intriguing, and I was kinda worried. I was like, "Is this gonna be one of those very heavy-handed, like, on the nose, women have it harder than
Mm,
shows?" And I thought that was so, like,
mm,
very subtly handled. Nothing about that show is very subtle, but I thought that's not
mm,
real. You could explain what that show is about, and you could leave that out,
mm,
mhm, mhm.
which I wouldn't because that
yeah.
is what it's about, but
Yeah,
it's, like, very, accessible to a lot of people.
yeah. It was good. I quite enjoyed it. Like I said, the last season, I was like, I don't know what's happening here."
Mm. I'm about to
But
actually start the last season, so I'll let you know.
yeah, yeah.
I'll give it a whirl. I'll do it.
I
I like
know, you haven't
her
seen
dad.
the
I
last
like what's her
season.
dad's name? The actor. I really like him.
Oh,
Favorite.
Monk. What's his name?
Oh, Tony
Shalhoub?
Shalhoub?
Oh,
Tony
he's
Shalhoub.
one of my
He's
favorites.
the best.
Yeah,
Tony
yeah.
Shalhoub accidentally takes communion. I mean, it does not get
Really?
he's running
Oh
away.
my god.
He's
Good
running
stuff.
away from people, and then he gets caught up, and he, like, gets put into a church, and he's like, "Before I knew it," and he's, like, the most Jewish person ever. No, he did. He just has it. He's like, "I don't know what to do with this." He's
Yeah.
carrying around the body of Christ and his
And then the mom was so good too, like, I was like I mean, I loved her, but I was also kinda like, "Oh my god, like, you need to chill out." Like, she was like I mean, the parents were both super high strung.
Yeah,
And
they
oh,
developed
what is
him in a cool way.
yeah, and then the manager, what is her name?
Susie, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
So good.
unbelievably good. When they go to the Catskills and then you look over and Susie's, like, in the employee show at the Catskills, and you're like, "What the heck? Girl, how did
Yeah.
you do this?"
No, we in what was the episode where, um, Midge, right, takes her to, like, a lesbian bar, and she, like, didn't figure it out until, like, halfway through. She's like, "Wait, where are we?"
Yes. With a cameo by John Waters, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was a good one. All right,
Sarah,
we
thank
do
you
have
so
to
much
wrap
for
up.
coming and being with us for this really beautiful conversation. Honestly, it feels so silly here, and it's so lovely. And then also
Yeah.
just really helping us understand your work a little bit more too, you know, and what you bring. So grateful.
And
Thanks for having
before
me.
we go, tell our listeners
Mhm.
where they can find you, where they can, if they want to work with you, all that stuff.
Oh, yes. So you can find me at prospecttherapy.com. My Instagram is prospecttherapy also. And most of my groups are actually on my coaching website, which is sarastanazai.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
I mean, we should really be getting together because we're all local.
Yeah. Can we get together?
You can come. Yes, you can come see my beautiful apartment.
Let's do it.
Alrighty.
Okay.
Thank you.